The phone rang at exactly midnight. I thought it was a wrong number, until the caller whispered my name and described the clothes I was wearing. It was a quiet Friday night, and I was home alone for the first time in weeks. My parents had left for an overnight trip, and I thought I'd finally enjoy some peace. I made popcorn, queued up a movie, and settled into the couch. The silence was comforting at first, the kind of silence where you hear every creak of the house, every hum of the refrigerator, every rustle of the trees outside. At exactly 12 a.m., the phone rang. The sudden shrill broke the stillness, and I nearly dropped the bowl in my lap. It was the landline, not my cell. No one ever called it anymore. Curious, I answered, "Hello?" There was a pause. Then, a voice, low, whispering, "You shouldn't be alone tonight." My skin prickled. I thought maybe it was one of my friends playing a prank. But the voice was unfamiliar, rough, male. I laughed nervously and hung up, convincing myself it was some random creep dialing numbers. I went back to the movie, trying to shake it off. But 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same number. Same whispering voice. "I can see you." This time my chest tightened. My hands grew clammy. I looked around the living room, at the darkened windows, at the faint reflection of myself in the glass. My mind raced. How could he see me? I hung up without saying a word and turned off the lights, thinking maybe darkness would protect me. But as I stood in the dark, the phone rang again. This time I didn't answer. I just listened to it scream into the silence, over and over, until it stopped. I waited. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. Then, a sound came from outside, the crunch of gravel on the driveway. I froze. My parents' car wasn't supposed to return until tomorrow. Slowly, I peeked through the curtain. The driveway was empty. But when I looked closer, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Footprints. Fresh, wet footprints leading from the edge of the driveway directly to my window. My knees went weak. I backed away, trying not to make a sound. The phone rang again. This time, against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" My voice cracked. The whisper was right in my ear. "I'm already inside." I dropped the receiver and ran to the kitchen. Every door, every lock I checked twice. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the handle. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find and pressed my back against the wall. The house creaked above me. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, upstairs. I didn't dare breathe. My parents' room was up there. So was mine. Whoever it was, they weren't lying. I dialed 911 with trembling hands and whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. She told me to stay on the line and stay quiet. The footsteps stopped. Silence again. The kind of silence that crushes you. Then, from the staircase, the faint sound of someone descending. One step at a time. By the time the red and blue lights flashed through the windows, I was sobbing with relief. Officers stormed in, searching every room, every corner, every shadow. But they didn't find anyone. No forced entry. No intruder. Nothing. Just me shaking, clutching the phone. One officer tried to calm me, saying maybe it was a prank caller who scared me into imagining things. But when he walked me outside to prove the house was safe, his flashlight beam froze on something in the grass. Another set of footprints, leading away from the house. And in the mud by the back door, the imprint of a hand. Not pressed flat, but dragged, as if someone had clawed at the door, trying to get in. The officer looked at me and said quietly, "Ma'am, these prints are fresh. Whoever it was, they were here. And they weren't playing a prank." Since that night, I've never stayed home alone again. And I never answer the phone at midnight. Because now, every time it rings, I hear his whisper in my head. I'm already inside. The vanishing passenger. I've been working as a rideshare driver for almost 3 years now, mostly to pay off student loans. I used to drive during the day, but about a year ago, I switched to night shifts. Less traffic, fewer drunk arguments, and more money from surge pricing. But nights also come with something else: stories you can never really explain to anyone. I'd already heard the rumors from other drivers: ghost passengers, weird disappearances, phantom ride requests that end in abandoned parking lots. Most of the time, I laughed it off. People love to scare themselves. But last October, something happened that made me question whether I'll ever sit behind the wheel at night again. It was around 2:10. When the ping came through. The map showed the pickup point on an old stretch of highway that hardly anyone used anymore, right on the edge of town where the forest swallowed the road on both sides. I hesitated. That area was known for accidents and had no streetlights. But I needed the money, and the distance showed a good payout. When I pulled up, my headlights fell across a figure standing by the guardrail. She was wearing a long, pale dress that clung to her like it had been soaked. Her hair was dark, stringy, dripping. She didn't wave me down, she just stood there, staring at the road as though waiting for something. I rolled down the passenger window. "Are you Melissa?" That was the name on the app. She turned her head slowly, like it weighed 100 pounds. Then she walked toward the car without saying a word, opened the back door, and slid inside. The smell hit me instantly: damp earth, mildew, like wet leaves rotting in a ditch. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Where to?" Her voice was so faint I had to strain to hear. 17 Willow Lane. I didn't recognize the street, but the GPS pulled it up. A neighborhood about 15 minutes away, near the river. I started driving. For the first few minutes, the only sounds were the wipers and the hum of the engine. I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. She was sitting there, yes, but in the reflection, the backseat was empty. I blinked, adjusted the mirror, convinced it was an angle issue. But no, the seat was bare in the reflection, even though I could see her plain as day if I turned my head. My chest tightened, my hands gripping the wheel. I didn't want to panic. I'd heard stories of hallucinations when driving too late, tricks of the light. I told myself that's all this was. But then she leaned forward, close enough that I felt the cold brush of her hair against my neck. "You should never have picked me up," she whispered. I jerked the wheel slightly, the car swerving before I corrected it. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. I forced myself to glance back. The seat was empty. The door was shut. The interior light hadn't come on. There was no sound of anyone leaving the car. My skin went cold, but I kept driving, refusing to stop on that dark stretch of road. The smell lingered, the wet earth and mold, like something had been buried and dug up. When I reached Willow Lane, the GPS directed me to a small rundown house at the very end. The porch light was off, the windows dark. I sat there for a long moment, trying to convince myself to get out, to at least check. But I couldn't. My whole body was trembling. I canceled the ride, turned the car around, and drove straight home. The next morning, I checked my trip history. The ride wasn't there. No record of a passenger named Melissa. No record of me ever being on that road. That should have been the end of it. But 3 days later, I got another request, same pickup location. This time, I declined it immediately. 10 minutes later, another request. Same spot. Different name. I stopped driving nights after that. But here's what chills me the most. Last week, a driver in one of the local Facebook groups posted about a strange passenger he picked up on the highway. A woman in a soaked dress, long hair covering her face. She gave him an address that doesn't exist. When he dropped her off, she was gone. His story got a lot of comments. Some said it was an old urban legend about a girl who drowned near the river after leaving prom decades ago. Others claimed they'd had the same experience, but buried in the thread was a single comment that made my blood run cold. It read, "She doesn't want to ride home." She wants company in the ground. And every time I get behind the wheel, now even in daylight, I check my rearview mirror far too often. Terrified I'll see that backseat empty again, even when I know it. The man in the window. I've never been a paranoid person. I live in the middle of a city, in a small one-bedroom apartment on the 14th floor. Being so high up always gave me a sense of security. No one could possibly reach my windows. No burglars, no creeps, no peeping Toms. That's what I used to believe that the first time it happened. I thought it was a dream. I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. for no reason. My apartment was quiet, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. Something compelled me to roll over and face the window, and that's when I saw him, a man's face. Pressed against the glass from the outside, pale, expressionless, his eyes wide and unblinking. Staring directly into mine, I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My heart was hammering, but when I blinked, he was gone. Just the city skyline, dotted with lights, the faint glow of traffic far below. I told myself I was dreaming. Or maybe I'd imagined a reflection. I forced myself back to sleep, though it took hours. But the next night, at the exact same time, I woke again. And there he was, his face filling the glass, inches from mine, eyes locked on me. I scrambled for the lamp, fumbling to switch it on. The room filled with light. The window was empty. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The following morning, I told myself I was under stress. I worked long hours, barely slept, drank too much coffee. Hallucinations weren't impossible. Still, something in the pit of my stomach told me it was real. Too real. For the next few nights, I tried to fight it. I closed the blinds tight. I wore an eye mask. I even drank myself to sleep. But nothing worked. At 3 a.m., without fail, I'd jolt awake, rip off the mask, and the blinds would somehow be drawn just enough for me to see him. Always the same face. Pale, grinning now. His forehead pressed so hard against the glass I could see the skin flattening. I started keeping the lights on. I even taped the blinds shut. Yet still, I'd wait to find them parted, just enough for him to peer inside. I called the building manager. He checked the security cameras on the roof and around the exterior. "There's no way," he said. "You're 14 stories up. No ledge, no balcony. No maintenance crews at night. Nobody's been near your window." I tried to capture proof myself. I set up my phone on video mode, propped against the nightstand. That night when I woke at 3 o'clock, I forced myself not to look, not to panic. The next morning, I checked the recording. At 3 a.m., the feed flickered. Static for 30 seconds. When it cleared, the blinds were slightly open. My bed was visible. Me, tossing in my sleep. And for just a moment, the faintest reflection in the glass. A pale face. I nearly dropped the phone. I showed the clip to a friend. He laughed nervously, said it was just glare, light bouncing off something. But he looked unsettled. Things got worse. The face didn't just watch anymore. It moved. I saw the lips shaping words. Over and over, though I couldn't hear through the glass. I finally gathered the courage to get closer one night. Heart in my throat. His mouth was forming 3 words. "Let me in." I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. I didn't sleep at all that night. I started crashing on friends' couches, making excuses. But no matter where I stayed, at 3 a.m., I woke up. Every single time. And though the room was different, the city outside unfamiliar, I'd feel it, that crawling sensation of being watched. Finally, I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I called my parents, asked if I could move back home for a while. They agreed instantly, though I didn't tell them why I got my last night in the apartment. I didn't bother trying to sleep. I sat awake, every light on, waiting for it to happen one last time. And right on schedule, at 3 a.m., I felt the air shift. The blinds rustled though the window was closed. And there he was. But this time, he wasn't outside. I'll never forget the sound, the soft creak of the floorboards as I turned and saw him standing inside my apartment. Between me and the door, pale, grinning, his lips moving silently, let me in. I don't remember unlocking the door or running down 14 flights of stairs barefoot. I don't remember the drive to my parents' house. All I know is I've never gone back. I left everything there. Furniture, clothes, dishes, everything. The building manager still calls, asking when I'll return for my belongings. But I won't. I can't. Because sometimes, even now, at 3 a.m., I wake up in my old bedroom at my parents' house and see the blinds trembling, just slightly, like someone's face is pressing against the other side of the glass. And I know, one night, he won't be asking anymore. The Whistling Woods. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. It wasn't the kind of place that showed up on a map, just one of those quiet rural towns with a single gas station, a diner, and way too much forest. The forest was the center of all the local legends. People called it the Whistling Woods. Supposedly, if you went in at night, you'd hear a whistle. Not the wind, not an animal, but something else, something that would mimic you if you answered back. When I was younger, parents used the stories to scare kids into staying away. They'd tell us about teenagers who vanished after following the whistles too deep. No bodies ever found, no tracks, nothing. Just gone. Of course, being kids, we turned it into a dare. Whoever stayed the longest in the woods at night was the bravest. But most of us never made it past the tree line. The darkness there was different, heavy, suffocating. It swallowed the glow of flashlights in seconds. By the time I was 17, I thought I'd outgrown the stories. My cousin Aaron, though, was obsessed. He loved testing boundaries, pushing dares further than anyone else. So when he suggested we go in one summer night, just to prove it was all nonsense, I reluctantly agreed. We left around 11 p.m., armed with 2 flashlights, a backpack of snacks, and way too much false confidence. The night was humid, the kind where the air sticks to your skin. The forest loomed like a black wall as we approached. Scared? Aaron grinned, nudging me. Just don't start whistling. I shot back. At first, the woods were quiet except for the crunch of leaves under our sneakers. The beams of our flashlights cut narrow tunnels through the dark. We joked to keep ourselves calm, trying not to acknowledge how every shadow looked like it could move if we stared too long. Maybe 20 minutes in, it happened. A faint sound carried on the still air. A low, slow whistle. 4 notes, drawn out. Aaron froze mid-step. You hear that? I nodded, throat dry. It's just the wind. But then he did something that made my stomach drop. He whistled the same 4 notes back. At first, nothing. The silence pressed heavy, and I almost laughed in relief. Then, from deeper in the woods, came the reply. Same tune, same pitch. I felt my chest tighten. Let's go back. But Aaron just smirked. Probably some kids messing with us. He whistled again, this time. The answer came quicker. Closer. We both spun our flashlights toward the sound, but the beams only caught trees. Branches, endless dark. Okay, seriously, I whispered. Let's just leave. Aaron hesitated, then finally nodded. We turned back the way we came. That's when I realized something was wrong. The trail looked different. The trees seemed closer together. The path we thought we'd been following was gone. I tried not to panic. We could retrace our steps, right? But every direction looked the same. Then the whistle came again. Only now, it wasn't ahead of us. It was behind us. We spun around, lights shaking. The sound drifted closer, circling us, weaving between the trees. Stop! Aaron shouted, his voice cracking. Who's there? The whistle answered, mocking, playful. And then, another one joined it. A second whistle from the opposite side. My heart was hammering. We ran. Branches slapped our faces, roots caught our feet, but we didn't stop. The whistles followed, crisscrossing around us. Sometimes close enough I swore I could feel the breath of it on my neck. I don't know how long we ran. But suddenly we broke through the tree line, stumbling into the open field by the old highway. The night was silent again. No wind, no whistles. Just the sound of our ragged breathing. We never spoke about it after that. Not to each other, not to anyone. We told our parents we'd gotten lost. That's all. But here's the part I can't explain. A week later, Aaron stopped answering my calls. His mom thought he was staying with friends. Then she thought he'd run off somewhere. The police got involved, but they found nothing. No tracks. No signs. The last time I saw him was in those woods. And sometimes, when I'm alone late at night, I swear I hear it again. A low, slow whistle, drifting just outside my window. 4 notes. Waiting for me to answer. I never do. The roommate who wasn't when I first started college. I was excited to finally live on my own, or at least out of my parents' house. The dorms weren't fancy, but they gave me my first taste of independence. My roommate, Claire, was a girl I'd known from orientation. She was funny, easygoing, and had this loud laugh that carried down the hall. We settled into a routine quickly. She always claimed the bathroom first in the mornings, and I'd wake up to the sound of her brushing her teeth, humming through the foam. At night, we'd talk until one of us passed out mid-sentence. The little rituals of living together made the transition to college feel easier. But halfway through the semester, everything changed. Claire had been stressed for weeks' classes. Family stuff, maybe even her boyfriend back home. She didn't say much, but I noticed. Then one Friday, she told me she was going home for the weekend. She stuffed some clothes in a bag and left without much of a goodbye. I didn't think much of it. But Monday came, and she didn't return. Then Tuesday. By Wednesday, her side of the room still looked untouched, her bed neatly made, her desk piled with books. I texted her. No response. Called her phone straight to voicemail. By the end of the week, our RA told me Claire had officially withdrawn from school. She wouldn't be coming back. Just like that, I had the dorm to myself. It was strange at first, but I figured I'd get used to it. Except I didn't, because that very first night alone, I heard it. The sound of the bathroom sink running. The faint scrape of a toothbrush. Footsteps padding across the tiles. It was midnight. I froze in bed listening. The noises went on for a minute before stopping. The door never opened, but I knew the bathroom was empty when I checked. I told myself I was imagining it. Old pipes. Neighbors in the next room. Anything but what it sounded like, but it happened again the next night. And the next. Always around midnight, always the same routine. Footsteps. Faucet. Brushing. By the 4th night, I was too scared to ignore it. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and set it on the desk before I went to bed. The next morning, I played it back. At first, it was just silence. Then the creak of the bathroom door. Water running. The distinct scrape of a toothbrush. And under it, barely audible, a whisper. I never left. My stomach dropped. I played it again and again, hoping it was some trick of the noise, but it was clear. A voice, her voice. I brought the recording to the RA, expecting him to laugh. Instead, his face went pale. He told me he'd heard from another staff member that Claire hadn't just withdrawn. She'd been found dead in her hometown the very night I first heard those sounds. I felt sick. From then on, things got worse. It wasn't just the bathroom sounds anymore. I started hearing the rustle of sheets on her bed, even though it was empty. The creak of her desk chair. The faint sound of pages turning, like she was studying late. One night I woke to the sound of breathing. Not mine, slow, steady from the other side of the room. I turned on the light, heart hammering. The bed was empty, but the blankets were rumpled, pressed down in the shape of a body. I begged the housing office for a room change, but they told me the dorms were full. So I endured it, night after night. The whispers grew louder. Sometimes I'd hear my name. Sometimes fragments of sentences I couldn't quite make out. Always in her voice. Then came the worst night. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of someone moving around the room. My first thought was an intruder. I sat up, fumbling for my phone, and that's when I saw her. Claire. Standing in the corner by the bathroom door. Her skin was pale, her hair hanging limp around her face. Her eyes looked empty, like two dark holes. She just stood there, watching me. Claire? My voice cracked. She tilted her head slowly, unnaturally, like her neck didn't quite work. Then she smiled, lips stretching wider than I'd ever seen in life. I never left, she whispered. I bolted from the room, barefoot, sprinting down the hall until I found the Ara's door. He opened it, bleary-eyed, but when he saw my face, he didn't ask questions. He let me crash on his floor for the rest of the night. The next morning, I refused to go back. I called my parents, begged them to come get me. They did, and I withdrew from housing that same day. I thought leaving would end it. But even now, months later, I can't escape. Because some nights, around midnight, no matter where I am, I hear it again, the sound of running water, the scrape of a toothbrush, footsteps on tile, and then, faintly, Claire's voice, whispering right in my ear. I never left.